The sands of Egypt whispered an ancient tale, a tale of a prophet and a king. Moses, chosen by God, stood before Pharaoh. His voice echoed in the grand hall. "Let my people go," he declared. Pharaoh, heart hardened, scoffed. He would not relinquish his slaves. The might of Egypt would not bend to a single voice. This defiance, a grave mistake. It would bring about suffering unlike any other. Pharaoh's heart was a fortress, impenetrable and cold. He refused to acknowledge the God of Moses. He refused to see the suffering of the Israelites. His pride would be his undoing, his stubbornness, his downfall. The stage was set. The plagues were coming. The lifeblood of Egypt, the Nile, turned crimson. The great river, once a source of life, now flowed with death. Fish rotted, and the air reeked. The stench of decay permeated everything. Panic gripped the people. Their cries for water went unanswered. Yet amidst the despair, hope flickered in their hearts. The magicians of Pharaoh were baffled, their magic powerless against the might of God. The first plague had struck, yet the people's faith remained unshaken. From the Nile, a new horror emerged. Frogs, millions of them. They swarmed the land, an unstoppable tide of slime and croaking, every corner, every crevice filled with these amphibians. They invaded homes, their cold bodies a constant torment. They leaped onto beds, their slimy skin a nightmare. The Egyptians found no respite. Even Pharaoh in his palace found himself under siege. He pleaded with Moses to stop the plague. He promised to free the Israelites. The frogs vanished, but their departure brought no relief. For now a plague of lice descended, tiny insects invisible to the eye, yet their presence unbearable. They burrowed into skin, they infested hair. An unbearable itching spread like wildfire. The Egyptians scratched until their skin bled. The palace echoed with the sounds of their torment. Pharaoh, covered in bites, realized the futility of his defiance. Again he promised to relent. Again he broke his word. Section 5. The Bite of the Wild. From the desert, a new terror arrived. Swarms of flies, dark and relentless. They blotted out the sun, casting an ominous shadow. Their buzzing, a constant drone, drove people mad. They bit, they stung, they spread disease. The Egyptians, already weakened, succumbed to illness. Yet Pharaoh still refused to yield. His heart, hardened by pride, could not comprehend the power he faced. Section 6. Death comes to cattle. A pestilence swept through Egypt. Cattle, their source of wealth and sustenance, fell ill and died. The stench of rotting flesh filled the air. Fields, once teeming with life, lay barren. The Egyptians watched in despair as their livelihood vanished. Their cries for mercy went unanswered. Pharaoh, though shaken, remained defiant, his pride a barrier against compassion. Section 7. The Mark of Sores. Boils erupted on the skin of the Egyptians. Painful festering sores covered their bodies. The pain was unbearable, the stench unbearable. Even the magicians of Pharaoh were not spared, their magic useless against this plague. Still Pharaoh refused to yield, his heart a stone, unmoved by the suffering around him. Section 8. Fire from the sky. The heavens opened. Hailstones, each one the size of a fist, rained down upon Egypt. These were no ordinary hailstones. They were mixed with fire. The sky crackled with fury. Crops were destroyed. Homes were shattered. The power of God was evident, yet Pharaoh remained unmoved, his heart a desert, barren and unforgiving. Section 9. A plague of locusts. A living black cloud descended upon Egypt. Locusts, countless in number, devoured everything in their path. Fields stripped bare, trees reduced to skeletons. The air buzzed with their feeding frenzy. The land, once fertile, transformed into a wasteland. The Egyptians faced starvation. Still, Pharaoh would not relent. His pride, a chain binding him to his stubbornness. Section 10. The darkness descends. A darkness thick and suffocating enveloped Egypt. It was a darkness that could be felt, a darkness that chilled the very soul. For 3 days and 3 nights the Egyptians lived in fear. They could not see their hand in front of their faces. They could only wait and pray for the darkness to lift. Pharaoh, shrouded in darkness, felt a flicker of fear, but his heart remained unchanged. Section 11. The Night of Weeping. A hush fell over Egypt, the darkness lifted, but it was replaced by a grief so profound, so universal, that it seemed to silence the very air. For on this night, the 10th plague had struck. The firstborn of every Egyptian family, from the highest noble to the lowliest peasant, lay dead. The cries of mourning rose in a chorus of unspeakable sorrow. Pharaoh, his own heart finally broken, cried out in anguish, his pride shattered, his spirit crushed. He had learned his lesson, but at a terrible cost. Section 12. Freedom, let them go! Pharaoh commanded, his voice broken, his spirit crushed. The Israelites, freed from their bondage, wasted no time. They gathered their meager belongings and prepared to leave the land that had held them captive for generations. The Exodus had begun. Section 13. Flight and pursuit. The Israelites, led by Moses, journeyed towards the Red Sea. But Pharaoh, his grief turning to anger, regretted his decision. He assembled his army, his chariots thundering, and set off in pursuit. The Israelites, trapped between the sea and the approaching army, trembled in fear. Had their newfound freedom been for naught? Section 14. Walls of water. Moses raised his staff. The waters parted. A path, dry and clear, opened up before them. The Israelites, hearts filled with awe and gratitude, walked through the sea as if on dry land. Pharaoh's army followed, but the God of Moses was not finished. The waters crashed back together, drowning the pursuing Egyptians. On the far shore, the Israelites watched as the last of their enemies vanished beneath the waves. They were free. Miriam, sister of Moses, took up her timbrel, and a song of joy, of deliverance, rose from the throats of the freed slaves. The Exodus was complete. The plagues, a distant memory, their God had delivered them.